As I stared at the screen, my hands started to shake. The heated footage from those security cameras didn't hold anything back. Tucked away in the shadows of the club, there was my wife, and she wasn't alone. Getting my hands on this footage had cost me a lot, but the price of knowing the truth? That was a toll I hadn't fully realized until now. That fateful Christmas party was the beginning of the end. I had sensed something coming, even before the night unfolded. My instincts had been blaring warnings, but I kept ignoring them. I watched Julia carefully select her dress, standing before the mirror for what felt like an eternity, meticulously putting on her makeup and testing out a new perfume, as if she was prepping for more than just a simple get-together with her coworkers. I had a gut feeling then, but I pushed it aside, not wanting to believe it. Julia worked as an account manager for a financial firm, and as Christmas approached, her company had rented out a nightclub to host their yearly holiday bash. It seemed innocent enough, a chance for everyone to unwind before the holiday season kicked in. There was no reason for me to doubt anything. We had a strong marriage, or at least that's what I'd always believed. Sure, I didn't know all her coworkers, but that had never struck me as an issue. Julia kept her work life pretty separate from home. That night, I stayed back with our daughter, like usual. We decorated the Christmas tree together, played a few board games, and later, after I tucked her into bed, I settled down with a book. The evening felt perfectly normal until it got late, and Julia still hadn't come home. By midnight, I decided to give her a call, just to see what was up. The music blasting on her end was so loud that I could barely make out her words. She said the party was still going, and she'd be home later. She sounded casual enough, but something about her tone struck me wrong. There was a hesitation in her voice, a kind of distance. Then, she didn't walk through the door until the next evening. Yes, the next evening. And when she finally did come home, something about her was completely off. Her hair was a mess, she reeked of alcohol, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I asked where she'd been, and she muttered some vague excuse about drinking too much and crashing at a colleague's place. No details, no believable explanation. Just a hasty apology followed by an awkward silence. My gut was yelling at me, but I held back. I wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that it was just a wild night that got out of hand. When Julia quickly changed her clothes and went straight for the shower, I felt this nagging feeling, something gnawing at me. As she tossed her clothes into the laundry basket, I felt an odd urge to check them. I don't even know why. Maybe my instincts were just screaming louder by then. So, after she shut the bathroom door, I walked over and examined the clothes she'd thrown in. Her dress, a sleek black number, was there, along with her bra. But one thing was missing, her panties. I sifted carefully through the clothes, and still nothing. My heart started racing. It was such a small detail, but it felt like a giant red flag slapping me in the face. Why would she come home without her underwear? Something was seriously wrong. When Julia stepped out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped up in a towel and looking as calm as if nothing had happened, I decided to dig a little. "So, how was the party?" I asked, keeping my voice light, even though my mind was racing in every direction. She barely glanced my way as she answered, "It was fine. You know how these work parties go, lots of drinking, silly games, a few contests. We all just got a bit carried away." In the morning, Lisa and I went over to her place to crash since she lives closer to the club. Her tone was a little too smooth, almost rehearsed. The way she spoke, a bit too evasive, only deepened the knot in my gut. I could feel it. She wasn't giving me the whole story, but I held back. If I pushed now, she'd just clam up, and I wouldn't get a thing out of her. No, I needed a different approach. The name of the nightclub lingered in my mind from our quick exchange. That was my lead. I go check it out myself, see what I could dig up. The next day, I quietly took a day off from work. Being in real estate had its perks, like a flexible schedule, so it wasn't hard to slip away without Julia noticing. I drove to the club, my mind racing with possibilities about what might have really happened that night. Once I arrived, I parked and made my way to the entrance. Inside, I introduced myself as a real estate agent. I spun a quick story about being interested in the property for a client. It wasn't the slickest lie I'd ever told, but it did the trick. The administrator gave me a polite, if slightly puzzled, tour of the place. Then I noticed something. There were cameras, security cameras placed all around inside. My pulse spiked. If those cameras were rolling the night of the party, there might be footage. Footage that could confirm my suspicions. But how would I get hold of it? After finishing the tour, I thanked the administrator, who still seemed unsure about my intentions, and walked back to the parking lot. My mind was now fixated on one question: how to get that footage. As I stood there, lost in thought, I bumped into someone. Hard. "Watch where you're going," the guy barked, sounding pretty annoyed. I was about to apologize when I froze. I recognized that voice. Looking up, I realized I'd run into Eric, a guy I hadn't seen since college. "Eric? It's me, Tom. Remember?" I called out, doing my best to mask my surprise with enthusiasm. Eric blinked, his irritated expression fading into one of surprise. "Tom? Man, it's been 10, 12 years?" he said, sounding genuinely pleased. We exchanged a few pleasantries, but my mind was racing. Eric worked here? That was a break I hadn't counted on. "You work at this club?" I asked, trying to keep it casual. "Yeah," he nodded. "I'm one of the managers here. Not quite where I saw myself after college, but it keeps the bills paid." Eric shrugged. This was my chance, my way in. "Hey, want to grab a coffee? There's a spot right across the street," I suggested, hiding the urgency in my voice as best as I could. He checked his watch. "I've got a break in about half an hour. Meet you over there?" he replied. "Perfect," I nodded, forcing a smile. I headed over to the cafe, my heart pounding. This could be it, my shot at getting the footage. I just had to play it right. Sitting down with a coffee, I waited for Eric, feeling the weight of what I might be about to uncover pressing on me. As you wait to find out what happens next, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps me create and share more content. When Eric finally walked into the cafe, he looked worn down, like life had taken a heavy toll on him since college. We started with some small talk, catching up on where life had led us. Turned out Eric hadn't had it easy. His mom had gotten sick, and he'd taken on a mountain of medical bills, which wiped out most of his savings. He'd bounced around a few jobs before landing this gig at the club. But as he explained, the job wasn't exactly glamorous. "Yeah, I'm a manager, but not the top kind," he said with a weary chuckle. "I'm in charge of the staff who handle cleaning and technical maintenance, making sure everything's kept in order. Not exactly the career I'd envisioned." Hearing that made my heart sink a little. Back in college, Eric had been a bright, capable guy, full of potential. Now, he was stuck overseeing the club's grunt work with little room to grow. He was doing what he needed to survive, but it was far from where he belonged. "You know, you were always the smart one in college," I said, trying to give him a boost. "I thought by now you'd be running your own business or something." Eric let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, life's got a way of boxing you in. Right now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water." I nodded, pretending to focus on the conversation, but in reality, my mind was elsewhere. I had something far more pressing to ask him, and I knew I needed to get to it sooner rather than later. After listening to him for a bit longer, I decided it was time to be direct. "Listen, Eric, I didn't come here just to catch up. I actually need a favor," I said, lowering my voice. "It's about the Christmas party. Julia was there, my wife, and I have reason to think she wasn't exactly straight with me about what went down." Eric's eyebrow shot up. "What are you saying?" Taking a deep breath, I forced the words out. "I think she might have cheated on me," I admitted, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten as I said it aloud. "I need to see the footage from that night, the security cameras. I need to know what really happened." Eric immediately stiffened. "Whoa, man, I don't know about that. For one, I wasn't even working that night, and for another, taking the footage? That's big. If I get caught, I'm finished. I can't risk my job." I could see the conflict in his eyes. Eric was a good guy, and what I was asking wasn't small. But I was desperate. I couldn't just sit with this feeling. I had to know the truth. Eric, I wouldn't be asking if this weren't serious. You know me, I'm not the kind of guy who does this kind of thing. But this is my marriage, man. I need to know what happened. If I'm wrong, fine. But if I'm right, I can't go on like this, doubting her every move. Eric leaned back, looking uneasy. Tom, I understand, but you're asking me to risk everything. They're strict about this stuff. I could lose my job. I wasn't sure what more I could say, but then an idea hit me. What if I made it worth your while? I suggested. He frowned, looking puzzled. What do you mean? I pulled out my wallet and laid $500 in cash on the table. Eric's eyes widened, glancing from the cash to me, clearly torn. Look, I'm not asking you to do this for free. I know it's risky. This is just for your trouble. And if you manage to get me that footage, I'll add another $700. I said, keeping my voice low as I leaned forward. And I'm not just talking cash. I know people. You're better than this place, Eric. You don't need to be managing the cleaning crew. I've got contacts in real estate, tech, finance. I can help you find something better. Eric rubbed his face, the inner conflict clear on his face. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. The money would help him out, and the idea of a better job had to be tempting. But there was fear there too. The risk of losing his only source of income weighed heavily. Tom, I don't know. I really don't know, he said with a deep sigh. If I get caught, I can't afford to lose my job. My mom's depending on me. I get it. Believe me, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. But I swear, I'll make sure you don't get caught, and I'll help you find a way out of this dead-end job. This could be your chance at a fresh start. Eric sat there for a long moment, just staring at the cash, clearly torn between the security of his job and the hope of something better. Finally, he nodded, though his face was still clouded with reluctance. All right, I'll do it, he murmured, his voice barely audible. But Tom, if anything goes south, I'm out. You got that? Of course, I replied, feeling a surge of relief wash over me. I promise you, nothing will go wrong. And once this is over, I'll do everything I can to help you find something better. You have my word. We finished our coffee, and Eric explained that he'd need a few days to figure out how to access the footage without drawing attention. We exchanged numbers, and I assured him that he'd receive the rest of the cash once he had the recordings in hand. As we parted ways outside the cafe, I watched him walk back toward the club, feeling a mix of guilt and hope. I knew I was asking a lot from him, but I also knew that this was the only way to get the answers I needed. Now all I could do was wait and hope that Eric would pull through. Even before Eric managed to secure the footage, I decided to go ahead and help him out with his job search. It weighed on me that we drifted apart after college, especially now that I saw what a rough spot he was in. This wasn't just about getting the evidence anymore. It was about helping a decent guy escape a dead-end role. I made a few calls to people I trusted in various industries, hoping someone would have a lead. To my relief, there were some promising opportunities, and I felt hopeful that I could help Eric get a fresh start. The days passed, and everything seemed ordinary on the surface. Julia went about her routine, calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. She laughed, she smiled, and showed no sign that she suspected anything unusual. I followed her lead, keeping my doubts buried deep. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was boiling just beneath the surface. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Eric. He wanted to meet up, he had something for me. We agreed to meet at a different cafe this time, one a bit further out, where we'd be less likely to be noticed. When I arrived, Eric was already seated, looking both anxious and eager. As I took my seat, he leaned in close, speaking in a low voice, as if we were in on some kind of secret. Here, he said, sliding a small flash drive across the table. Everything's on there. I downloaded all the recordings from the entire night of the party. I took the drive, feeling a strange blend of relief and anxiety churning inside. What did you find? I asked, my heart pounding. Well, it's not perfect, Eric said, fidgeting nervously. There are some areas in the club where the cameras don't have full coverage. Spots where people could slip away if they wanted to stay out of sight. But I got everything the cameras picked up. His unease was plain to see. I don't think anyone's noticed yet, he added, glancing around. But if they do, it could trace back to me. I understood his worry. This wasn't a small favor. It was a serious risk he'd taken on my behalf. I pulled out the rest of the cash I owed him and placed it on the table, but he hesitated, not reaching for it. Tom, I really don't want to take this, he said quietly. I'm only doing this because, well, you know my situation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have agreed. Eric, you earned it, I insisted, sliding the money toward him. Take it. And listen, you don't have to be afraid. Quit that place. I made a few calls, set up some meetings for you. You've got options, man. You don't have to stay stuck at that club. His eyes lit up, and for the first time, the worry in them faded just a bit. You actually did that? He asked, surprised. Yeah, I've got a few people who are interested in talking to you about some solid roles. It's a real chance for a fresh start. Finally, Eric took the money, slipping it into his jacket pocket. Thanks, Tom. I don't know what to say. Just do what you've got to do, I replied, giving him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. You've got a future, Eric. Don't let this place hold you back. We agreed to keep in touch before parting ways, and as I headed home, the flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Despite my urge to watch it right away, I held off. I needed a moment to prepare myself for whatever was on there. The next day, I waited for Julia to head out for some errands, giving me a perfect window to finally confront the truth. Once she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, holding the flash drive in my sweaty hand. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, feeling my heart hammering in my chest. Finally, I took a deep breath and clicked play. The footage started, showing the party in full swing. The music pounded, lights flashed, and everyone looked like they were having the time of their lives. Dancing, laughing, and drinking without a care. There was Julia, looking incredible in that dress, chatting with her coworkers and joining in the fun. At first, everything seemed perfectly innocent. But as I continued watching, the party began taking a turn that made my stomach twist. What started as harmless dancing and drinking quickly escalated into something much darker. I could hardly believe my eyes. Her colleagues, professionals supposedly, were behaving like they were reenacting a scene out of The Wolf of Wall Street. While they weren't doing anything technically illegal, the vibe was heading straight into sleazy territory. It was as if the alcohol had stripped everyone of their dignity. And soon, this corporate holiday gathering had morphed into something entirely different. The games got dirtier, with laughter and shouting filling the room as people seemed to forget they were even co-workers. The camera captured flashes of women taking shots off each other's bodies, while the men egged each other on to do things I'd rather not repeat. And then, through the crowd, I saw her, my Julia. She wasn't just dancing anymore. She was completely unrestrained, swaying wildly with a drink in one hand, clinging to both men and women, like there were no boundaries left. My pulse hammered as I leaned closer to the screen, watching her throw her arms around some guy I didn't recognize, pulling him close. They started moving toward the back of the club, where the camera coverage became spotty. But just before they slipped into that blind spot, I saw enough to realize this night was spiraling out of control. Julia was kissing him. Not some friendly peck, but full-on, as though they were the only two in the room. His hands were all over her, groping her without any shame, and it made my skin crawl. Couldn't breathe. This wasn't some innocent, harmless party flirtation. This was something else, something twisted. And then, to my horror, another man joined them. I watched Julia laugh and embrace him, wrapping her arms around his neck as if this was some game. The three of them became a tangled mess of limbs, fueled by alcohol and reckless abandon. Before they even reached that dark corner, she crossed every boundary I could imagine. I can't describe what I saw, I don't want to, but there was no denying that she'd gone too far. Then, they disappeared into the shadows, slipping into the one part of the club where the cameras couldn't see. My heart pounded, each second dragging out painfully as I stared at the empty screen, fully aware of what was happening in that dark corner. I didn't need to witness it to know. When they finally reappeared on camera, it was somehow worse than I could have prepared myself for. Julia stumbled back into view, her dress disheveled, her hair a tangled mess. She was hurriedly adjusting her clothes, as if smoothing out the wrinkles could erase what had just taken place. The two men she'd been with were also straightening themselves up, one of them grinning like he'd just won some twisted prize. And that's when I saw it, red lace panties poking out of his pocket. Her panties, that was it, the undeniable proof I dreaded. They had done it, all three of them. The realization struck me like a punch to the gut. Julia hadn't just betrayed me. She'd humiliated me in the worst possible way. I felt sick to my stomach. My hands shook as I paused the footage, staring at the frozen frame of her fixing her dress, completely unaware of how much was about to change. A surge of anger rose inside me, growing hotter by the second. I wanted to destroy everything and everyone involved in this revolting betrayal: Julia, her co-workers, everyone. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved, the woman I'd built my life with, had turned into someone so unrecognizable. Sitting in front of my laptop, staring at the damning footage, I could barely keep myself together. My hands shook, my heart raced, and every fiber of me screamed for revenge. I wanted to confront Julia, to find those men and make them pay for what they'd done. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't bring me peace. It would only make things messier. Taking a deep breath, I tried to regain my composure. Maybe revenge wasn't the answer. Maybe the best thing to do was stay calm, look at the bigger picture, and start preparing for the inevitable divorce. If Julia had chosen to betray me like that, then she didn't deserve any part of my life. I could take everything away from her legally. The next day, I sought out a strong attorney, someone with a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces. I laid out the whole situation, describing the footage, Julia's betrayal, and how we'd need to handle the evidence without putting Eric at risk. The lawyer listened intently, nodding as I spoke, and assured me that we could use the video strategically while keeping its origin under wraps. He also promised that once the paperwork was ready, we could move forward, ensuring Julia wouldn't have a leg to stand on. About a week later, I got an unexpected call from Eric. "Hey, Tom," he said, excitement clear in his voice. "I just wanted to thank you, man. That recommendation you gave me, it worked. I landed a new job, better pay, better hours. I quit that nightclub for good." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Eric, that's incredible. I'm really happy for you. You deserve it. Seriously, I couldn't have done it without you," he added, sounding genuinely relieved. "I owe you one." I smiled. At least something positive had come from all this mess. But just as things were beginning to fall into place with the divorce proceedings, something unexpected happened. One day, while Julia was out, I noticed her purse lying on the counter. I can't explain what drove me to look, but something pulled me toward it. As I looked inside, my eyes landed on a folded piece of paper. Curiosity got the best of me, so I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a doctor's report, test results. My heart froze as I skimmed the page. Julia had tested positive for a sexually transmitted disease. It wasn't life-threatening, but knowing she'd caught it from her affair made my blood boil. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had been reckless and kept it hidden. This went beyond infidelity. This was complete negligence. I snapped a photo of the report with my phone, then carefully returned the paper to its place. As I stood there, anger raced through me. This wasn't going to be a quiet, easy divorce. I had to act, and I had to act decisively. That night, after Julia went to bed, I made my move. Taking her phone, I quietly went through her work messages. It didn't take long to find exactly what I was looking for. Photos from the party, shots of her with the same men I'd seen on the footage. She hadn't even bothered to delete them. I noted down their names and dug for more details. It wasn't long before I found out where they lived, and initially, all I could think about was driving over there and giving them a taste of my fury. But then, an even better plan formed in my mind. Instead of lashing out physically, I decided to strike where it would hurt them the most. I tracked down the wives of the men Julia had been with and reached out to them cautiously. We arranged private meetings, and when we met, I told them everything about the party, the infidelity, the possible health risks, and how their husbands might have exposed them to an STD. I backed up my story with the screenshots and photos I'd gathered. Their reactions were just what I expected. Shock, anger, disbelief. These women were as furious as I'd been. I suggested they contact my lawyer, offering to help them take legal action against their husbands or at least be ready for the consequences. This was my form of revenge, hitting those men where it hurt most, by shaking the foundations of their own marriages, just as they had done to mine. With that done, it was time to confront Julia. One evening, I waited for her to come home from work, sitting calmly at the kitchen table with the divorce papers neatly stacked in front of me. When she walked in, I silently handed her the documents. "What's this?" she asked, sensing something was terribly wrong. "I know everything, Julia," I said in a cold, steady voice. "The nightclub, the men. I know what you did." Her face drained of color, her hands beginning to tremble as she fumbled with the papers. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "You're being paranoid. This is crazy, Tom. You're making this up." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I saw everything. I've got the video, Julia. I watched the whole night, from the party to your fun with those men. Her eyes widened in shock, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "And I know about the doctor's visit," I added, pulling up the photo of her test results on my phone. I held up the screen for her to see. "You've been hiding this from me, and I'm done." Julia's defenses crumbled. She tried to explain, saying it had been a mistake, that she hadn't known what she was doing because she was drunk, that it hadn't meant anything. But I wasn't buying any of it. I'd seen too much, heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. I pushed the divorce papers across the table. "You're going to sign these," I told her firmly, "and you're going to cooperate, or else I'll make sure everyone, your family, your friends, knows exactly what kind of person you are. I'll show them the footage, the test results, everything," I said calmly. Julia's face twisted in anger, but she knew she was cornered. She had no power here, and there was no way out. You bastard," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. But I just stood up, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. "Sign the papers, Julia," I said, walking out of the kitchen. "This is over." And with that, I left her standing there, fuming and defeated, fully aware that her lies had finally caught up with her. A few hours after I'd given her the divorce papers, reality hit her hard. She came to me, her eyes swollen from crying, her voice barely a whisper as she begged me to reconsider. "Tom, please," she murmured. "We can work through this. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to fix it. Please, don't throw everything away." But I stood firm. "Julia, it's over. I don't want to hear any more of your apologies. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." She sobbed and pleaded, but no words could undo the betrayal or erase the memories seared into my mind. I told her once more that she needed to face the reality of what she'd done. I was done with her excuses and empty promises. It was time for her to pay for her actions. When the divorce proceedings began, my lawyer took charge, handling everything with remarkable precision. He made sure the video evidence was used discreetly, ensuring it wouldn't lead back to Eric. Eric, after all, had moved on to a better job, leaving the nightclub behind. As for Julia, she didn't stand a chance in court. The evidence stacked against her left no room for argument, and the case moved forward smoothly. However, there was one complication. One of the men from the party, a guy named Scott, didn't handle the fallout well. His involvement with Julia had turned his life upside down. One evening, after the legal process had started, Scott showed up near my house. I didn't notice him at first, but he'd been waiting, desperate and furious. He confronted me, accusing me of ruining his life. I could see the anger in his eyes, but I just shook my head. "You ruined your own life, Scott," I replied, turning to walk away. That's when he swung at me. Maybe he thought he'd catch me off guard. But what Scott didn't know was that I'd been boxing for years. His punch barely grazed me, and before he could react, I had him on the ground, knocked out cold. It wasn't even a real fight, just a sad, desperate attempt from a man unable to face the consequences of his own choices. I didn't feel any satisfaction, only pity. So that's the story, folks. The divorce went through without a hitch. I got full custody of my daughter, we split the property, and Julia ended up with exactly what she deserved. Now, I'm free from the lies, the betrayal, and the toxic mess my life had become. A few weeks later, Eric invited me to his birthday party. It was a small gathering, just good people enjoying each other's company. And there, I met someone. She was an amazing woman who, for the first time in a long while, made me feel like life could be good again. We clicked right away, and as we talked and laughed, I realized that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. So that's how it all ended. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments.